Welcome everyone, I'm Dr. Sam Spinelli, physical therapist and strength and conditioning coach with Citizen Athletics. Today we're coming back at you with a new series of MacGyver Monday, looking at the leg extension. This is going to be a continued series that we're doing where we're looking at finding solutions to not having access to traditional gym equipment that you may have had in the past, or how you can get an exercise done that you really want to without having the machine itself. What we're going to be looking at today is going to be the leg extension. So if you want to work that quad in isolation, you don't have access to the leg extension machine, what do? Well, we're going to take you through 10 different options on how you can do that today. Now, let's roll that intro. Citizen Athletics was born out of a passion to combine the disciplines of physical therapy, strength and conditioning, and general fitness. My name is Sam.
I'm Teddy, and we are Citizen Athletics.
Now we're going to be looking at a few different tips here. The first one that we're going to be looking at is going to be with a flat bench. A lot of people have access to some sort of a bench, a box, something that you can rig up. Now, a lot of times you'll see individuals that will come over, they'll be sitting on a bench, and they'll be trying to do it like this. Maybe they have a band, maybe they have an ankle weight on, something. And this is an okay option. We're going to give you a little quick tip here on how to make this a better movement. The first thing is that you want to have some sort of a higher elevation with your leg. If you look at most traditional leg extension machines, your butt's a little bit lower than your knee, and it gives you a better position to really extend with. So you can take a foam roller, some sort of other similar device, put it underneath your knee. That way you can get a nice good angle. So this is the kind of the general setup we're going to be looking at for a flat bench. Now, just my leg weight isn't that challenging. So I want to introduce some sort of resistance added on. You could do it, for instance, with a kettlebell. This is an okay option for sure. You get set up, you can hook it onto your toes, and then from here, I'm gonna kick up. And this is really good to get a little bit more peak challenge. It's not quite as challenging as this bottom position to begin, but you know what? This is definitely more than nothing. So if you have a kettlebell, you can get a decent challenge in with a 10, 12, or 16 kilo weight. Now, if you're looking for something to be a little bit more challenging, if you have a flat bench, you should have one end and another end you're able to hook devices onto, and that's where hooking on a band comes in really well, particularly challenging the top range of the leg extension. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a long band like this. We're gonna hook it onto the far side. So what I want is to be able to wrap it underneath so it stays secured, and then I'm gonna pull it way across underneath, pin her down, get my foot in there, and she's set. Now I'm gonna get my foam roller, and I'm in position, and now, I can start doing them. And you see, this can give one heck of a challenge. Really hard to get that full range, but it gives you some nice solid resistance starting at the bottom. As you keep going up, you can really get some peak tension. One downside to this, that's what our next option is going to address, is that if you look at the angle of this band, because when we look at resistance, we're looking at horizontal, there's not a lot of horizontal resistance here, and it really more gets into peak once we look at this angle here and then going up higher. So really the peak challenge is mostly just at the top. And when we look at challenging for muscle growth, we usually want to work through as much range of motion as we can. So in a dream world, that's where a leg extension machine is good, because you get challenged at the bottom and at the top. So sometimes having an option where you do both a top movement and a bottom movement is a good solution. So this handles the top. Our next option hits more of that bottom range, and that's going to be with an incline bench. So you can see here, we've got the incline bench set up. You want to have it up to around a slight incline, so not a 45 or a high incline, you know, looking more around that 30, 40 degrees. And then I can take my one leg, get on there, and then now I'm able to work through that. So I could go all the way up, but when I have my band resistance on, so you see I'm gonna have my band, run it over, come and get my foot in. You see it's pulling me really low, and so I can get on here, and I can start to kick when you have a stronger band on, you're able to really work those low ranges, which is going to be a great option to work on. So I think this is a really good one for a lot of people, especially when you combine it with that one, and you can lay the incline bench flat down and hit both ranges really well. Now if we move on, we're gonna move to our next option. That's gonna be if you don't have a bench and you wanna hit it with some body weight, for instance. So what you can do here is you can come into a quadruped position. So I'm in quadruped. I'm in a nice good position of around 90, 110 degrees of knee flexion to start kicking out of and start working on some leg extension. So this quadruped leg extension is a really good option because you can really change up the way that you do it to find the right challenge for yourself. You got this double leg option, which is decent. You can go to a single leg option, which is more challenging. If you have a band, you can add a band in for even more challenge. Whew! I'm a big fan of that one. And then, if you want to work through more range, you can elevate your feet on something like a bench. So you sit up just like you were, you're here, and then you kick through. And here you're able to sink into deeper degrees of knee flexion to really work through that greater range that I discussed. It's really beneficial for hypertrophy and also mobility. So that's a really good movement that you can use very easily with minimal equipment. Now, if you want to also work on different options that don't require much equipment, you want to try working those deeper ranges, another good option is we're going to do it laying on your stomach. So what we're going to do here is we're going to lay flat on the ground. This is going to be the prone version, where you're going to be doing a leg extension prone. You need a band to put around your ankle. You want to get it set up before you lay down. It's a little bit easier. I'm going to run it over my shoulder like this. I'm going to lay on my stomach. And I'm set up here to be able to hold resistance and start kicking. You can see, as I mentioned earlier with that discussion about the ranges and resistance, it's mostly challenging at that higher degrees of knee flexion range. But it can be a pretty challenging option. Works really well for a lot of people. Now, if you're looking for a way to take that challenge up even higher, work again on more of the end range, or just get away from being on the ground, another one that we can do is a wall version of a leg extension. This is where I'm going to be sliding up and down the wall. To do this, traditionally when you look at a wall sit, you're going to have your feet out here, you're going to come down, you're going to be staying in position. We're going to build off this kind of a movement because it is more an isolated quad movement. We're going to try to make it more challenging and not do an isometric. So what we're going to do, you'll stand up, you're going to bring your toes right to the wall. So we want to have your heels elevated. Ideally, the higher the better. Then from here, what I'm going to do, I'm going to get set up. I'm going to work on sliding down, trying to stay as upright as I can, having my knees go as far forward as they can, and then kicking up the wall. So I'm coming down. And this is a good one because now I have a big challenge down here at this deeper range. As I push up, I keep having a challenge as I push against the wall. So the whole range is pretty challenging to do. And you can utilize a towel to make it a little bit easier to slide against. If you find that you're having a really hard time keeping your feet against the wall, you can put a plate or something here that you have so your feet are a little bit off the wall. So you don't have to have them directly against the wall. Just the further back you have them, the greater the challenge will be for that. So that's a good one for a lot of people. Now, if you want to work on a similar movement, but you don't want to be sliding up and down the wall, you find it a little bit uncomfortable, another option is to do a reverse Nordic. So to do that, I'm going to be kneeling. I'm going to have a pad. I'm going to have my feet on the ground. And then from here, I can put my hands on my hips, cross my arms. You can progress in many ways. And I'm just going to try to lean back as far as I feel comfortable, and then kick up. So it's that isolated knee extension, but I'm also getting some resistance at my hip to resist my hip from bending. So that works on my rectus femoris as well. So as I go back, I'm fighting, really feeling my quads light up here and kicking. Woo! So it's a really good one to work on a lot of your different quad muscles as well. Now, that's pretty challenging. One before, pretty challenging. Maybe not quite at that point. You want a way to isolate your quad, work on some leg extension, but not so hard. Well, this one with the band is a really good option. It's a common movement that we see in a lot of rehab settings where individuals are looking to work on some isolated first movements on those quads. It's called the terminal knee extension. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna have a band set up. You wanna have it anchored somewhere around like roughly knee height. You're gonna walk back so you have some resistance. You're gonna have your knee bent. I'm gonna work on trying to extend my knee, thinking to try to get my heel down by squeezing my quad. This movement's overall okay. There is a downside that a lot of times people will focus on squeezing with their butt and kicking back to their hip and really trying to force that back that way. So you just want to make sure you're focusing on your quad as you do this, particularly if you're trying to strengthen your quad. Now, it's okay. Another downside to it is that you can't really load it up super well. So I wouldn't say it's the best option for sure, but it's a viable one. You can progress off a similar movement of that, but now you increase the band resistance even higher. Instead of trying to resist the band or trying to push the band back, what we're gonna do is we're gonna have both knees in a band. And now, instead of trying to kick my knees back, my knees are more locked in place and my body's gonna move around it. So this is a Spanish squat. So what I'm gonna do here, so I'm gonna sit back and up. As I do it, I want to try to make sure that I don't lean forward because this takes off loading. I don't wanna let my knees shoot forward either. It takes off loading. So I'm really trying to keep my knees back, keep my torso relatively upright as I go. And you'll feel those quads working real hard. I'm gonna have a rough time walking tomorrow. Now, Spanish squat, good one, but maybe you have options to use other machines, just not the traditional leg extension. For instance, a lot of gyms have something like a GHD or a reverse hyper. Those are actually really good options that we can use to load up a leg extension option. We'll put in a video of a reverse hyper here of Broden, the cameraman, crushing some at a different gym just because my gym doesn't have it, but I'll show an option with a GHD. So again, glute ham developer, normally used for, back extensions, leg curl variations, which we've shown previously. What you can do here is you can set this up where you have a band anchored either at the weight resistance, at the prior anchor point, it comes through, hooked on, and you're able to move it through here. I'm then gonna come and sit on the GHD. I can lean back, give me a nice little backrest. You see that angle we talked about earlier, everything's set up, and then I can work on kicking up. It's a pretty good option overall, pretty challenging for most people. And what's nice about it is it's really stable. So with some of the other versions that we discussed, just the last few, is that your leg can move around a lot. So you can't necessarily really focus in on the complete challenge to your quad as you could because you have to control the movement or to try and maneuver around it. That's good if you want to try to improve your movement control, improve your motor awareness, any of those kinds of factors. But if you're really just trying to focus in on hypertrophy, building that muscle to the best degree, the most stable movement that you can have is usually gonna be the best. So that's a really good one. Getting into one more option after I tie my shoe, boom, is going to be using a sled. Now, sleds are awesome. Essentially, it's just weighted resistance while moving. What we're going to do with this one is going to do a backwards walk. When I walk backwards, so I'm moving here, I load up into basically a mini leg extension, come over, and then have to kick back and repeat. So you could do this with band resistance. For instance, I could set up my anchor point over on the rack, and just like how I was with the terminal knee extension, wrap the band around my waist and push back. But you have a very limited range of motion, you can't load it up very well, whereas something like a sled is an excellent option for this. So you can see here, I've got my weight belt, I've got a band just to increase my length, and then I've got some resistance. So I'm gonna pop in. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get low, and then I'm gonna start to push, 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 and really focus on trying to push with my quad each time, loading it up to the best degree I can. When you load this setup really heavy, it is a phenomenal movement to crush your quads. Now that's gonna be 10 movements that you can utilize in place of leg extensions to work on some isolated quad strengthening. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, smash that like button down below, helps out a ton. And make sure to subscribe. We try to release at least 2 videos every week. If there's any other videos you want us to cover in the future, any movements that you're struggling with figuring out solutions for, comment down below and we'll do our best to crush that video. See you in the next one.